see what it's really like to be a pastor's wife. So today's topic, being a pastor's wife, expectations versus reality. And sometimes those two things are vastly different, aren't they? And that's where this really came about, because I was talking to one of my good friends who's a pastor's wife, and just we were able to share stories of expectation and then reality. And the saddest part is the reality can leave us feeling like we're doing something wrong. So many of us, before we became a pastor or a leader in a ministry, we served in church, in the church that you attended. And you serve with love and passion and with a heart that's good and pure. And so our expectations when we became a pastor or a leader in ministry is that it would be the same thing. And unfortunately, that's not what happens. So when it doesn't look like that, though, it leaves us feeling like we must be doing something wrong. And why are people responding like this? Why does it feel like this? And it leaves us feeling like there's something wrong with us. When you look into somebody else's ministry, remember, you're only seeing the surface again, not the day-to-day grind that you're experiencing, or the day-to-day battles that you're experiencing. So no matter what, when you're looking at somebody else's ministry, you don't get to see the inside of what it actually feels like. And that's the expectation that's not met. And that leaves us feeling like maybe we're not called. So when you compare, well, this doesn't happen to her ever, and it doesn't happen there, that's when you're left feeling disappointed and feeling like maybe you weren't called to this, or maybe you just can't do this, or maybe you just don't know how, or you don't know how to do things right, or you're just not good enough. It makes you question yourself and what you're doing, and that's so heartbreaking, because listen, we all experience the same things, but we only get to see the surface of everybody else's ministry and lives. And so it feels like we're out here all alone experiencing these things, and there must be something wrong with us. So when we're only seeing the surface, and the reality of what it feels like is so different. And it's that way at every level of being in ministry. Hear me, at every level of ministry, it feels the same way. People respond and react the same way. So we're going to talk about this topic for several weeks, because there's so many different levels of this. One of the topics I want to talk about is pastoring and in ministry and having children. Oh, the expectation and the reality, so vastly different of raising children as a minister. And then another week that we're going to talk about is pastoring and when people come against our husband, or the ministry, which is our husband in turn, and how to handle that. So there's so many different levels of this topic of expectation and reality. So I want to share with you some of my experiences so you don't feel all alone. And listen, I have hated every moment of thinking about this topic. Just dwelling on it for any period of time can become incredibly discouraging. So I'm only going to briefly dwell on this so I can get off of dwelling on it, because I relate to how you could feel if your expectations and reality are so different. So the only reason I'm sharing this with you, though, is so that you know you're not broken. And it's not because you're not called to it. And there's nothing wrong with you. This is ministry. Everyone feels at every level. So just keep going. So some of my experiences, one of my all-time favorites, you're getting ready to go out and speak to the people and share with them. And somebody from our own altar area speaks out as we're walking out to greet the people. Oh, I'm sorry. We forgot your red carpet today. Yeah, so fix your face real quick because the people are being ready to be greeted and you're not allowed to respond or react to that. You don't have any time. You're just walking past and this little nasty comment comes out of one of your people that you serve alongside. Yeah, that's the reality, not the expectation, right? So when you get those snide remarks and those nasty little digs that happen, you're not alone. That is the reality that is different than our expectation in ministry. And let me tell you, everyone has an opinion about how you should say or do something the right way or how you could do it better. Everybody has an opinion. They'll speak that opinion. And they love to pick out the negative. How about, here's one. You'll like this one. You'll appreciate it. How about when you stand up to preach and they find out it's you preaching and you have 5 or 6 people stand up, turn around, and walk out the door? It's a really good ego booster. If you're doing it for any kind of accolade or ego, that'll just kick you in the solar plexus right there, won't it? So again, I'm just sharing these things so that you can understand you're not alone. You're not broken. You're called to ministry. One of the things is you are judged and criticized not only by the congregation, but by your staff and leaders also. It brings some people absolute joy to recognize any flaws or things that they think they can do better than you. So one time I was in my own office. I was in the safety and protection of my own office. Come on now. And I didn't have time to do my nails. And if you know me, I am very big on making sure my nails are always well groomed and maintained and taken care of. And that can be a really big task sometimes, unless you do acrylic and all of that. And I was trying not to do acrylic. And so I had gotten to the point where I was so busy, I didn't even have time to maintain my fingernails, which is ridiculous. But that's the reality versus the expectation. Oh, they only preach on Sundays. Yeah, well, the reality is it's a 24/7 job. And some days I don't even have time to polish my own nails. So it was one of those days. I didn't get a chance to polish my nails. They were disgusting. They looked terrible. I couldn't stand it. And I walked in and there was a woman in the office and she recognized that my nails were terrible. And she took great pleasure in that. She said, you know what? I love seeing that you're not perfect and you don't have it all together. Now, this is simple and safe, and I wasn't upset with her at all. And it was just like, okay, yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect, and I have lots of flaws. But I brought that up to say that some people really relish that. And not just the congregation. Some of the people that serve right alongside of you that say, oh, I love you, I respect and honor you. And the second they can find anything, any flaw, anything, even right down to your fingernails that you've done wrong, then they will just, oh, did you see her nails? She didn't have her. They'll be so quick to judge. And did you see how she didn't do this or she didn't do that? Did you? That's the reality versus our expectation. Our expectation is that there will be honor and respect for the position that God has called us to. But unfortunately, that's not what we experience. Many times you experience a battle with the board. Maybe you've come into a church that you're taking over from a previous pastor, and you're just not the last pastor. You just don't do it like that. I don't like this. It's change for them. And there's lots of criticism and judgment about the way that you do things. And you just get smacked in the face with the reality of ministering. And the part that I really want to reach into your heart and speak to you on today, please hear me. This is every person that is in ministry experiences this. It doesn't mean that they're better than you because they're you only see the surface of what they experience. Doesn't mean that you're not qualified or not called. Everyone that is serving in a place of ministry, you're called to do that. You're equipped to do that. We can't allow the reality to versus our expectation to take us out. There will be very few people, very few, if any, that will celebrate and lift you. Most would rather keep you at their level or below. And I'm talking about people that you serve alongside. You think that people would be serving alongside to push you to be greater and better? No, most, very few want you to be greater. Very few want that. It makes people, especially women, feel better if they can pick out anything you don't do perfectly and point that out so that you look bad and they look good. People love stepping on you to lift themselves up, but then it just leaves everybody feeling yucky. This is everyday life in ministry. You know, you talk till you're blue in the face. You take time out to counsel people. And what do? They go out and they do the opposite of everything that you just told them to do. You would think that people, the expectation is that they would hear their pastor, they would hear the shepherd, and they would heed the voice, and that they would do it. Nope, doesn't happen. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking till I'm blue in the face, and I wish I could use my cast iron frying pan, but that's also not reality. So, and then everyone wants to be your friend. Everyone wants to be mentored by you, but no one actually wants to follow you and do what you do and go where you go to get where you are. Oh, I can't even tell you how many people have asked for me to mentor them, yet they don't come to any classes that I teach. They don't listen to any of the trainings that I do. This is reality. The expectation in reality is so vast for every single person. So don't put yourself down when you are only seeing the surface of a person's ministry, when you only see what's on the exterior, because it is not the reality for any person. Listen, there's always, wait, I don't want to get there. I want to talk about armor bearer. Oh, I have had so many people ask to be my armor bearer. And you know what? Honestly, I don't do that. I won't even do that. I'm a big girl. I'm quite independent. I can carry my own bags and take care of my own stuff. Now, I do have the best assistant in the whole wide world. But on the armor bearer front, if you're setting yourself up to expect people to open the door for you and carry your bags for you and get your water for you, what happens when that's not there? So it's okay to allow people to do that stuff, but please don't put your expectation in it. Don't put that you think people are always going to be there, because they're not. There's always a Judas among you. And Jesus, his disciple and closest friends, deserted him in his darkest hour. There was a whole group of people when Jesus was teaching that were unwilling to follow where he was going. They said it was too hard and they left. A whole group of people. And he turned and looked at his disciples and said, "Are you going to go too?" And ultimately they did. They abandoned him in his darkest hour. So I just want to show you, expectation and reality can leave you in such a place of disappointment. It can leave you feeling less than what you actually are. It can leave you feeling discouraged and disappointed and like everybody else must be doing it right and I'm just over here doing it wrong because this is the response and reaction that I'm getting and they must be so much better than me. It's not true. It's not true. We are all equal. We're all equipped with the same thing. We all have been given everything that we need for life and godliness. So please don't discount yourself because of the way the reality is versus your expectation. Please don't participate with surface expectations. And hear me on this point. Take time to pray for women in ministry Those women that are doing great things, maybe in your eyes, they're like superwoman doing huge things, people that you like really look up to. Imagine if you experience what you do with the amount of people that you're able to impact. How much more, all those things of reality that you experience, how much more criticism, judgment, and tearing down do they experience? They need your prayers. They need our celebration. They need our encouragement, and never our criticism and tearing down. Please, if you ever look at a woman and say, wow, they're really doing awesome things in the kingdom of God, just take time to pray for them. Bless them. Go out of your way to encourage them. Say kind words to them, because if your reality causes you to think, wow, maybe I'm not called. Man, this is really discouraging. I don't know if I can do it. Don't think for a moment that those thoughts don't go through their head, and even on a bigger scale. But we have to fight those thoughts. We have to fight the feeling that maybe we're not called or we're not good enough. You need to know and realize every woman that is a pastor and is in ministry anywhere experiences the same reality that you got shocked with when you entered into ministry. Everyone. I know it's hard to believe because we feel like it's only us. It's not. Woman of God, it is everyone across the board. So it's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're not qualified. It's because it is the reality. So I love this passage of scripture. I love it and hate it at the same time. It is not one of my favorite ones. But when we look at the word of God, it shows how awesome our God is and that we are not alone. So let's look at the prophet Ezekiel. The prophet Ezekiel, the Lord told him, and he told him in advance. Wow, that's terrible. I'm so glad this isn't where we're living in today, that we get to live in the blessing and prosperity of God. But he told him in advance, Ezekiel, listen, I'm going to have you take my word to my people, but they're not going to listen to you ever. They're not even going to turn. But I still want you to go and tell them. Oh my goodness. Doesn't it feel like that some days? Like God said, you have to go and you have to tell them the good news and you have to live an overcoming, victorious life, but they're never going to respond. No one, not one person is going to hear you and respond to you. I don't think we'd be lining up to sign up to do ministry if the Lord told us, I want you to go and share my message, but nobody's going to listen to you because they're just rebellious and they're not going to hear you. It sounds awful, completely awful, but that's a little bit of the reality. You know, we can't make anyone do anything. And, you know, I celebrate every person that gets breakthrough and deliverance and really gets it. Let's celebrate every little one that does, because there are a vast amount of people that we're going to tell and you're going to speak until you're blue in the face and they're just not going to respond. So we're in really good company. Actually, you're better off than the prophet Ezekiel that made the Bible. He made biblical impact and he didn't change one soul. So you're already doing way better than Ezekiel did. So let me just read some of these passages with you. I'm praying that today that this is encouragement to your heart, that you're not alone, that you're okay, you're called, you're appointed. And just because the reality doesn't meet your expectation doesn't mean that you can't do this. So let's read Ezekiel. It's chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 3. Son of man, he said. I'm sorry. This just cracks me up. I just don't know anybody that would sign up to do this. I feel so bad for Ezekiel. Son of man, he said, I am sending you to the nation of Israel, a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been rebelling against me to this very day. So not just them, but the people before them and the people before them and the people before them. They've all just been rebellious. They are stubborn and hard-hearted people. But I'm sending you to say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. And whether they listen or refuse to listen, for remember, they are rebels, at least they will know they have had a prophet among them. Son of man, woman of God, let's just replace your name there. Son of man, woman of God, do not fear them or their words. Don't be afraid, even though their threats surround you like nettles, briars, and stinging scorpions. It's so encouraging. Ministry is going to feel like nettles, briars, and stinging scorpions. Don't be dismayed by their dark scowls. I love this so much because I'm envisioning this is reality. This is the reality versus expectation. Son of man, do not be dismayed by their dark scowls, even though they are rebels. You must give them my message. Woman of God, you must give them my message, whether they listen or not. And then listen to this portion, but they won't listen, for they are completely rebellious. I am so thankful. That is not our message today. The message today to you is that some will follow, some will hear, some will get saved, and it's God's will that none will perish. And at the end of the chapters of Ezekiel, the Lord goes on to say, no longer will he ever withdraw himself from his people. So we get to live a much better reality than at least Ezekiel got to live, because it says, but they won't listen. So we've got a little one up on that. All right, let's continue on. They won't listen to you because they won't listen to me. So let's take this off ourselves and about ourselves, and let's put it on the reality. The reason they don't listen to you is because they won't listen to God. They are, as I said, a hard case, hardened in their sin. And here's where we can take some encouragement from what Ezekiel experienced. But I'll make you as hard in your ways as they are in theirs. So I am set as hard to share the good news and the gospel as any person that is rebellious in my church. God has made me stronger and equally as hard as the most rebellious person in the church, the most disrespectful. I can go to the polar opposite in teaching respect. He has set me as hard. It says, I'll make your face as hard as a rock, harder than granite. Don't let them intimidate you. Don't be afraid of them, even though they're a bunch of rebels. Do this whether they listen or not. If you warn them, I like this portion right here. This is good encouragement too. If you warn them and they refuse to repent and keep on sinning, they will die in their sins, but you will be saved yourself because you obeyed me. We are responsible to obey God. It does not matter what anyone else does or how they respond. And this is how today I can keep living the way that I live with joy and peace, despite the reality of being a pastor's wife, the reality of disrespect and dishonor and judgment and criticism and people picking and poking apart everything that you do and having people actively out to destroy you and having a bullseye on your head when the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. This is how I can continue today loving ministry, loving what I do, because I do it because I'm going to be obedient to God. And I actually wrote a whole book and workbook on this very topic. And if you don't have this yet, this is the secret to how I can still love life and love ministry today, is because God has taught us and equipped us to have everything that we need to have no more hurt in our lives. And this is 10 chapters of what I've experienced in life and how God has taught me through every circumstance how to have joy and to walk away with no hurt at all. And we can live free from that. And God desires every single one of us, especially in ministry, that we're able to go unhindered, that we're able to obey him and share his message unhindered by the reality that shocks us and our expectation of what ministry should be like. So if you haven't already got this, you can get it on Amazon or just email me. I can get better pricing for you. I can get group pricing for you so that you can do it as a Bible study. We have several of our women doing this as a Bible study. We've been doing conferences on this, and you can contact us to do conferences. God is just bringing deliverance all over the world so that women and men, I actually have taught classes to both, and so that we can walk through life with no more hurt, because God has equipped us and authorized us to walk with no hurt so that we can live in the abundant life that he has called us to. But we have to be willing to go because God tells us to go, not because our expectations are met. Because if you've been in ministry any period of time, you've already realized, wow, the reality is so different than the surface that I saw. He tells us if they don't receive us, to just shake the dust off our feet. But he still tells us to go and speak his word. He doesn't say, oh, if they don't receive you, just don't go anymore. You don't have to share my message because they're not going to. Nope, he actually said to Ezekiel, they're not going to listen, but I still want you to go, because if you go and tell them, they'll be responsible for their sins and not you. But if you don't, if you do go, then you won't be held responsible. You told them so that they knew. And our job is not to please people. You never will be able to please people. Our job is to please the Father and to share the good news and to keep preaching. If we're looking for them to respond, we will always be left feeling in that place of being inadequate. And like maybe we're not called, maybe we're not good enough. Yes, you are. Woman of God, we are all equal in God's eyes. He is no respecter of persons. You have been given the same authority. You have been given the same call. You have been given the same tools. You have been equipped exactly the same as every other woman. So don't allow the reality, the scary reality, the discouraging reality. Like I said, just even thinking about this message I'm sharing with you today and having to dwell on it any period of time for me has been incredibly discouraging, even for myself. And so we have to be so cautious of allowing the reality that's so polar opposite of our expectation to take us out and make us feel inadequate and make us feel like we're not called for the job. Woman of God, you're equipped. You have everything that you need. You keep preaching. You keep going. It does not matter what anyone else does or says or how they respond. If everyone around you is disrespectful and condemning and critical and judgmental and actively out to destroy you, shake the dust off your feet and just be obedient to God and keep sharing his good news. And that's how I can stand up when people turn around and walk out because I'm speaking, or immediately turn and start having a conversation with the person next to them because I'm speaking. That's how I can stand up there and do it over and over again. You are not alone in your reality. Remember, even the greatest and most influential woman or person in ministry experiences the same reality that you experience. So pray for them. Pray for them. Never, ever, ever, ever join in the critical or the judgmental of somebody that is doing things for God. Don't join them. Be a part of the solution. Pray for them. Do good things for women that are leading in ministry. Bless them. Pray for them. They need it just like you need it. So you're not alone. Reality of ministry is the reality of ministry. It's how we handle it that makes the difference or not. I'm out to just please my Father. I'm out so in the end, I can say, I obeyed you and I did everything that you told me to do. I told them they were rebellious and hard-hearted, but you made me as hard hard-hearted and as hard-faced and as fixed in the opposite direction as they are. He's equipped you to be as hard for the opposite that they are rebellious. So you are in good shoes today. You are better off than the prophet Ezekiel, who was told that no one's ever going to listen. You're at least going to have some people that listen, that follow, and that their lives are changed. God wills that none should perish. We need to keep doing our job and don't allow any offense or any hurt in your life, because that will leave you feeling inadequate. So please, please, if you haven't already gotten my book, we go really deep on this topic. It will help you from experiencing the inadequacy and the disappointment of your reality, and it'll allow you to walk in abundant life that God has authorized and equipped you for, no matter what level you're at of ministry. And you'll be able to keep going no matter what people respond or how they act towards you. So welcome to ministry. It's reality for every single one. And you know what? It's well worth it. It is well worth always pleasing the Father and obeying Him. There's great reward in that. I don't want to be responsible standing before God saying, I didn't dare say anything because they were evil and rebellious and they scoffed at me. I won't stand before God and say that, and neither will you. We will stand before God and say, I said it, I did it. They were rebellious, they scowled, they criticized, they judged, but Daddy, I did it. So join with me, ladies. Let's keep moving on. Strong, better, better, better. Free of hurt, free of offense, allowing nothing to affect us. Have a blessed week, and we'll see you again next week right here. If you have any topics that you'd like to discuss in this topic about being a pastor's wife, please send me a message and we will get to those topics.